Welcome back to the Balance and Barbells podcast. Today, we're going to be talking about body recomposition because this is the most common request that I get from clients coming in, from women who are just chatting with me and wanting to learn ways to actually transform their body. When you are looking at body composition, this is basically what your body is made up of: how much muscle mass, how much body fat, how much water weight. It's your body's composition and its buildup. This is something that's very sought after, and you hear a lot if you think about what the outcome is that you want. Oftentimes, at least a very common one I hear, is wanting to lose weight, wanting to build muscle mass, maybe wanting to have big glutes and also have abs. And a lot of social media will tell you that that is not possible, but the reality is there is ways to do it. It is just a longer process and it takes much more strategy in order to actually accomplish that. It's not something that you can just go into a deficit with. It's not something that you can just necessarily eat in a surplus. You have to be very strategic with body composition and recomposition. And there has to be a structure behind what you're doing, a consistency behind what you're doing, and making sure there is a strategy behind how you're applying your training and your nutrition. So we're going to kind of dive into what that looks like, how you can do that for yourself. This is something that I have done several times with myself. I help clients do this. And it's something that I'm definitely even working towards right now. So I think it is a very fitting episode, especially as we're heading into the winter season and as we're heading into that time frame where you can definitely be a little bit more comfortable. You can be a little more comfortable to change because you're not in as little clothes as possible. You're not wearing a bikini all the time. You're not going on vacations as much. So it's a little bit easier to apply some of these methods. So I want to kind of dive into what it actually is, how to actually build muscle mass, and then give you the framework of how you're going to apply this so that you can do this yourself. If you haven't already started out with my transformation blueprint and the roadmap that I created, it's a 10-part series that dives into how you can build your own transformation and how to build out your own roadmap. So make sure you go and listen to that series and also download the guide that you can follow along and do the transformation roadmap by yourself and apply it to your life. It is a detailed 21-page guide that is going to walk you through exactly how to build out a plan designed for you. So make sure you go listen to that. That is on the podcast. And then there's also a download that is in the show notes that'll give you the PDF that you can follow along. I highly recommend you print that out and you follow along the process for yourself. That's where you're going to get the most outcome from it. Let's dive into today's episode talking about body composition and learning how to build muscle mass while losing body fat and building a better body composition. And I want you to really understand what body composition is, because a lot of times when you hear women say they want to lose weight, they will use that phrase of "I want to lose weight." But really what you want generally is to lose fat. And that is how you kind of determine your body composition. You want to change your body composition. You want to have a lean and toned figure, which means that you are going to have more muscle mass on your body and you're going to have less body fat on your body. That's going to restructure your body composition. So you could be a place where you might be a little bit more body fat than you want, or maybe a little less muscle mass that you want. And so you're trying to restructure your body composition and change the way that your body is made up of certain things. And that is more what we're looking at when it comes to toning and leaning than necessarily being able to tone a muscle. And I hear this a lot, especially when women are saying that they want to get their muscles more toned or they want to see more tone in their muscle. You can't necessarily tone a muscle, but you can build a muscle up to be more prominent and to be stronger and bigger. And if you change your body composition, that's going to show off a lean and toned sculpt, which is what most women want. So that is where you have to change your body composition and pay attention to that. The foundation of building muscle growth, this is going to be part one of what you have to do for changing your body composition, is you have to build muscle mass and you have to make sure that you have a good base before you can focus necessarily on losing body weight. I see a lot of women come into coaching or come into wanting to find a program that is going to help them lose body fat first. And while that is attainable for some, there is a lot of underlying work that has to take place first, and your body has to be in a place where it is ready to lose body fat. If you don't have enough muscle mass, if you don't train in a way that is going to build muscle mass, and you are already in a caloric deficit and you've been in one for a really long time, your body is not primed to lose body fat and it's not going to lose body fat. You're more than likely in a place where you're going to wreak havoc on your metabolism and you're not going to see the outcome that you want. You need to make sure that when you're looking at the outcome that you want and you're looking at what your goal is. You have your internal factors and you have your internal body primed to be in a state where it's going to respond, because you don't want to just waste time and energy, which is what will happen a lot if you don't have the right strategy, you don't have the right structure, and you don't know what you're doing. So if you're just kind of like throwing things at the wall and hoping that it sticks, it's not going to work if you don't have your body primed and if you're not following the right structure. So you have to understand the structure and the foundation of building muscle mass first, and what that's going to look like for your body. If you're already in a place where you're lifting and you're doing it consistently, you're eating a good balanced diet, you're focusing on your protein, and you're not seeing results and you're more in a plateau, that's where we might just have to tweak a few things and focus on what you're doing to apply progressive overload, what you're doing to make sure that you're in a little bit of a deficit, whether it's through activity or through nutrition. And then the same of if you're building in a way that you're focusing on progressive overload in your training, or if you are just focusing on fatigue and sweating and just movement in general, because that's going to play a part as well. So when we look at the foundation of building muscle mass, one, does not happen by accident. It is not an easy thing to do, and it has to be done strategically. You technically can build muscle mass by just following a routine that's going to be applying progressive overload, and that could happen accidentally. But if you are 12 weeks, 16 weeks, or even longer into your journey, and you're saying you're not seeing results, it's because it's not strategic. And you can't at this point necessarily put on muscle mass by doing the same thing. In order to build muscle mass, it requires change and it requires consistency. You have to be doing something consistently with time under tension and progression. Your body has no reason to change if you are not applying something to it to change. It has to be uncomfortable, it has to be challenging, and it has to be new in order for the body to respond in some way. So it has to be one of those three things. And by that, I'm not saying that you should be changing up your workouts all of the time. That's probably going to hurt you more than it's going to help you. But it does mean that you have to have some challenge and some change that's going to require your body to change. So if you want to build muscle mass, you have to understand that it happens through something that's called progressive overload. And I'm sure that's not a new term to you. A lot of women that I talk to are not new to fitness and they understand the concept of progressive overload. But the question is, are you actually applying it? Because understanding something and knowing the solution versus taking action are two separate things. And you need to make sure that it actually is applied in your training. Otherwise, just because you know it doesn't mean it's going to happen. So this means you have to gradually increase the changes in your program that's going to add more intensity and to add change to your body. When you add more intensity and you add challenge in, your body has to adapt. And if your body is adapting, it's going to change, or it's going to tell itself, okay, I'm not strong enough to do this current weight, so I need to change. I need to break down and get stronger, because if this happens again, I need to be stronger when that happens. That's the best way to understand progressive overload. Your body is adapting to the environment or to the thing that's happening to it. So if you add that progression in, whether it's through reps, sets, or intensity, you can add change to your workout, which is going to apply progressive overload, which is going to result in building muscle mass. The foundation of building muscle mass comes down to progression and to the progression in your workouts. If you can look at your workouts right now and say that I haven't added anything in the last 6 weeks or 6 months, there is not enough change to require your body to change. So you have to add in that progression somewhere. That can be adding in reps, adding in sets, decreasing rest time, or adding in intensity through increasing weight or decreasing the tempo and increasing the amount of which you focus on the eccentric movement. That is an eccentric movement, and you would slow that down so that you can feel the mind-muscle connection and you can feel the connection for your body, and slowing things down to ensure that muscle is being activated, and that's going to add progression in there. If you're just doing momentum right now, if your form's not right, we want to focus on those areas first before we add in weight, because it's just adding in weight, especially if you're not targeting the right muscle group or through tempo and paying attention to the actual muscle that's being engaged, you're not going to get the outcome you want. You're just kind of playing around with energy at that point. So you have to understand that progression. You have to make sure it's applied in your workout. So look at your workout program over the last 6 weeks to 6 months and ask yourself if you're tracking progression and if you can see where you're seeing progression in your workouts. I want to actually inspire you to have some sort of structure where you're looking at the consistency of which you're progressing, but also you're tracking progression. Because if you just think you're progressing, but you actually analyze it over a couple weeks and you notice that your reps aren't changing, your sets aren't changing, your intensity's not changing, and you've been doing the same weight for months, there's not actual progression there, and your body has no reason to change. The next part is your nutrition. Nutrition is so crucial to any outcome that you want to achieve. If you do not have a good nutritional foundation that is supporting the outcome you want, you will not see the results that you want. So you have to make sure that your nutrition is tailored to support the outcome you want, but it's going to truly fuel your body, because what we want to do with nutrition is look at more, not less. We're not trying to add in as little as possible and take away things and look at restriction. We're trying to add in things. Where can I support my goals? Where can I support my outcome? I'm getting more of the things that are going to help me achieve the outcome I want versus less nutrition and less food in general. Less does not result in the outcome you want. More of is what results in the outcome that you want. So you have to make sure that you have an understanding of that, because if you are looking at your nutrition and you are always thinking of, I need to eat less, I need to only eat clean, those are not going to be the foundations of your success. The foundations of your success in nutrition are going to understand the things you need more of and ensuring you're fueling yourself properly. That's going to tailor towards the outcome you want. So when we look at nutrition for body recomposition, the biggest number we need to look at and the biggest metric we need to look at is protein. When you look at your protein, you need to ensure that you're getting at least 0.8 to 1.2 grams per pound of body weight. And generally, I tell women do this towards the goal weight that you want to accomplish. So if you're 168 pounds and you want to be 125 pounds, your goal would be anywhere from 0.8 to 1.2 grams of 125 pounds. So you would make that number be the goal weight you're trying to strive for. You can always do the weight that you're currently at, but that's going to definitely be something that's a little bit more advanced, looking for more muscle mass and potentially a little bit more of a surplus. It could be a little bit closer to maintenance as well, but you want to make sure that you get enough protein. And for some women, I would say it's really hard to get that much protein in. So always start with the goal weight. And if you feel like you need to add more in, you can always do so towards your current weight. You want to exceed your current body weight though in the 0.8 to 1.2 grams per pound of body weight. So if you're 168 pounds, I would not do that calculation past that point. So you want to make sure that you're kind of within those ranges. And here's why body recomposition is so important when it comes to protein. If you are in a deficit specifically, the goal is to eat less than you or consume less than you are burning, so that your body has to use the fuel that it already has on itself to use it as energy source, right? And ideally, if you do it correctly, you will lose body fat, not muscle mass. But that's not always a guarantee if you don't do it correctly. And where I see a lot of women fail with this is they will go into a deficit and they focus on calories specifically. If you are focusing on calories specifically and your protein and your carbohydrates are not aligned, odds are you are using your own muscle mass to sustain energy, because it is an easy source for your body to use. So you want to ensure that when you are doing this, you have a sustainable amount of protein that you are consuming every single day, and specifically around your training times, because you want to maintain not only the muscle that you've built, but you want to increase your muscle mass. In order to do that, your body needs that nutrition at the point of training so that it can recover and it can refuel and get stronger. And the best time and the best window to do that is within 30 minutes to 2 hours of your training. So that's going to be pre-workout nutrition and post-workout nutrition. Now, for your pre-workout nutrition, we're specifically going to be looking at, if you're in that 30-minute window, mostly carbohydrates and simple carbohydrates that are going to digest quickly, because we don't want an upset stomach. We don't want anything to slow us down. We don't want digestion slow down so that we're not able to actually perform in the gym. But we need those fast digesting carbs so our body can use that in order to have energy during our lifts, which is going to push us towards being able to lift more and add that progression in there. If you don't have energy, your body's not going to push itself. It's going to be fatigued and you're not going to be able to push past your limits there. So you want to ensure that you have some carbohydrates there. Now, you can have a pre-workout meal anywhere from 2 hours before your workout and still have that sustained energy. But at that point, we're going to be looking at things that are more balanced. So you're going to want protein, carbs, and fats, and a good mix of a good meal before your workout. If you're about 30 minutes out from your workout, I recommend just a small amount of simple carbohydrates just to make sure you get enough energy. And that could be like a banana, that could be any sort of fruit, something that's going to be still whole food based. Like, I have seen a lot of things specifically around get Rice Krispie treats or get candy. And not that I'm saying that's bad. It is just not going to be the best source. It's not a whole food source. And I'm very much an advocate for whole foods as much as possible. So focus on things that are going to be simple carbohydrates like fruits, and things that are going to be all natural, that are going to allow you, or whole food based, that is going to allow you to have that carbohydrate boost, but still not have a huge sugar rush or a huge blood sugar spike right before your workout. After your workout, this is the most crucial time you're going to be focusing on nutrition. And this is going to be a mix of carbohydrates and protein. I usually say have an even mix of both. So if you're eating 30 grams of protein, have 30 grams of carbohydrates. And a lot of people skip this. They only focus on the protein aspect. And the reason you don't want to do this is because carbohydrates are crucial for your process of protein synthesis. They are a part of regaining that energy that you've already burned during your workouts. So to actually replenish the glycogen stores that you took from during your workouts, you need carbohydrates and you need energy. So you want to make sure you get a good mix of both so that you have a good balance and you're going to support, again, more of what you need nutritionally in order to receive that outcome. And that's going to be different for every single person, but I recommend that the highest amount of carbs or the highest carb and protein meal that you have is around 30 minutes to 2 hours post-workout, and that is a balanced meal. This should be your biggest meal and your highest carbohydrate and protein meal. That's going to be your meal timing of what you're going to be focusing on nutritionally. So I always recommend if that's going to be broken up into 2 meals or if that's going to be broken up into 1 meal, however you want to do that, just do that within that 2-hour time limit and make sure that you're getting a good balance of that. That's going to be when you're the most hungry, but it's also going to be what's going to sustain you long term, because if you don't give yourself enough post-workout, your body's going to be pulling from itself so that it can get the energy that it needs, and you don't want to do that. That's going to minimize the amount of muscle mass you can build. It's going to take from your current muscle mass, and it's going to actually waste energy from what you just did. Basically, now we're in energy wasting versus actually getting the outcome we want or building muscle mass. So make sure you're fueling yourself post-workout. And this is why it's important to understand that you don't want just less than, you want more of the things that are going to support you. So that's a nutritional piece that you need to be looking at. And everybody's going to be different. You've got to have the understanding of what your macronutrients need to look like, what your nutrition needs to look like. And again, you don't have to be tracking in order for this to be successful, but you should have that kind of guideline of how you're going to be balancing out protein, carbs, and fats, making sure you're getting balanced meals throughout the day, and then also timing that around your pre-workout and post-workout nutrition. The next aspect is your training and why specific training truly matters. When it comes to training, you need to understand that the only way to build muscle mass is through resistance training and strength training. That can be two of the same things. I've seen a lot of comparison between Pilates and strength training and which is better for the outcome you want. And the reality is they're completely different of one another. They both have their purpose. They both are amazing and can be supplemental into your routine, but they have different outcomes and different reasons for doing them. For Pilates, you can use your body weight, you can use reformer, and you can add resistance training in and basically add in a form of resistance because you are using your body weight in ways that you wouldn't generally. So it's going to add in weight through your own body weight, which is possible to add in some muscle strength, but you're not going to get a significant amount. And generally what I recommend Pilates for is flexibility, mobility, and core strength. Those are great ways to use and supplement Pilates into your training. But if you are trying to build muscle mass, you want to be focusing on true strength training that is going to allow you to build muscle mass. You need a good split that's going to allow you to hit each muscle group at least once a week. And depending on your outcome and the goal you want to achieve, let's say you want to build glutes, maybe twice or 3 times a week. And you can split that up realistically. I'm not telling you to go 7 days a week. What I'm telling you is you need to structure your training plan designed around the outcome you want. So if you want to build glutes, you don't need to go to the gym and do glutes 4 times a week specifically or exclusively, and then do upper body the rest of the week. Maybe you need to split that up into some full body workouts. Maybe you need to split that up into some lower body, upper body splits. But you want to make sure that you have enough exercises and specific movements, we'll get into that in a second, that are going to be designed around building muscle mass. And that is going to be done through weight training and strength training. You can do that with body weight, like I said, but that's going to require you to make sure that you are doing it in a way that is going to challenge yourself. And then there's going to be a point where you reach where you're going to need to add in weight for progression. So I always recommend if you're new to this, you can always start with body weight. But then once you get to a point where you feel like you are passing a rep range or a set range, that you're not at failure and you could keep going, it's time to add in weight and progression. And the same is true when you're doing weights. When you get to a point, let's say that you have 3 sets of 12 reps. If you were getting to that 12th rep with a weight you're doing and you feel like you could do 13, 14, 15, or even 18 reps, you need to increase your weight because now that weight is too light. If you can't increase your weight, that's where you increase your reps or you decrease or increase your sets. And that's where you play around with your progression in other forms. Now, with strength training, the exercises that you need to be focusing on, the ones that are going to help you build mass, are compound movements. And these are movements that focus on multiple muscle groups at the same time. Think squats, deadlifts, rows. They're going to be working and using different muscle groups in the body to perform that exercise. Whereas isolated movements are focusing on one muscle group. So bicep curls, tricep extensions, that is focusing on one specific muscle group. And when you split up your workouts, you want to be focusing on a good balance of around 3 to 4 compound a session and 1 to 2 isolation movements. And the reason for this is because you can lift more mass with compound movements because you're engaging more muscle groups. And that's going to allow you to build more muscle mass. Isolated movements are great, but those are things that should be supplemented into your training plan, not exclusively your training plan, especially if you're trying to build muscle mass. A lot of times that can be an exercise that you can confuse for fatigue, especially if you're not focused on form, and especially if you are not paying attention to progression. So you want to make sure you have a good understanding of that. And you want to make sure that you have a good split designed around the outcome that you want. And then the last part is recovery. I feel like this part is missed out on so frequently because you're focused on going to the gym, getting as much exercise as you possibly can, because that's where you have been told that you're going to build the most mass or you're going to see the most results. And this is where I can see a lot of women overdo or be focused on the wrong things, because at this point, they're just focused on activity over actually what's happening and how they're going to build that body composition. So when you are focused on recovery, you need at least 48 to 72 hours between each muscle group before you should train that again. That's going to allow your body an appropriate amount of time to repair and recover. And that will allow you to be stronger for your next session, allow you to add more weight in and not train too soon. But if you were training too soon, your body doesn't have enough time to recover, which can halt or stall the amount of muscle mass or development that you get. So you want to make sure that you have a proper amount of recovery and also be focusing on enough recovery overall in terms of rest and recovery and sleep, 7 to 9 hours per night as much as possible. And then also focusing on like that window of 48 to 72 hours between each muscle group before training. And we don't want to be focusing on too much cardio at this point. This is where you want to be making sure that you have a good supplement of cardio, but we're not focusing on too much, because that's where we can get into muscle wasting, because we're using too much energy and we're focused on maybe too much of a deficit, which is going to have us pull from our muscle mass if we're not fueling properly. So if you're adding in a lot of cardio, you have to make sure that you're compensating for that with nutrition. Otherwise, you might be getting a hit or miss where you are not putting on muscle mass, your body composition won't be changing then, and you're going to be feeling like you're in a plateau or in a cycle of not seeing results, even though you're doing a lot of work. Because it doesn't, again, it's like the nutrition piece. Not less, it's more of the things that are going to get you the outcome that you want. Now, the hardest part and the biggest truth behind how recomps work is that if you are new to fitness or you are more of a beginner and starting out in your building phase and your fat loss phase, generally recomps will work better and they're more effective at that time, because this is kind of a phase where you're going from either not having a good structure to more of a structure that your body's going to respond to, where you have a good routine, where you've done cuts and you've done bulks in the past. Your body is still responsive, but is a much more structured and strategic process. And you have to make sure that you have a good plan that is aligned to that bigger outcome, that's going to actually have the proper progressions, have the proper nutrition, and make sure that there's a good recovery split in there as well. And that we're paying attention to either your deficit, your maintenance, or your surplus, and adding in that nutrition at a good timing point, and also increasing and changing those metrics as needed. So it is a much more strategic and structured process. And if you're like, I've been doing this for 16 to 18 weeks and I'm just not seeing any results, or I'm really frustrated because at week 6 and 8, I was seeing a lot of progress and now I'm not seeing as much anymore, and I've still been consistent, I've added in progression, I've changed my nutrition, things just aren't working. That is a very common complaint I hear. And the reason being that it is a much more strategic and much more structured process at that point. You have to be paying attention to the metrics and the process and ensure that there is actual changes happening. And oftentimes, you're not going to be able to add 5 to 10 pounds every single time you're increasing your weight or adding that progression. You have to really pay attention to tempo. We have to pay attention to mind muscle connection. You have to pay attention to meal timing. You have to ensure that you have a proper amount of rest and recovery. And there's a lot of structured workouts and exercises that you have to add in to ensure that you are seeing that progression, and then also pairing that with your nutrition and ensuring that your cardio isn't overtaking, that you're getting enough recovery, that your cortisol isn't too high, that your nutrition is at the right points, and all of the metrics kind of align in a bigger piece. And if they're not, then that's where you can start to see that your plateau starts to happen and you're not really sure what to do because you feel stuck. So if you're at that point, you can definitely run through my transformation roadmap. It might be able to guide you in a direction of where you can go and build out your plan. Like I said, this is a 10-part series that walks you through the different parts of what you need to apply and changes you need to make. It's a great foundation to start with and analyze and apply into your training. And if you are somebody who's like, I am just done dealing with this, I'm tired of being frustrated, I'm ready for somebody to guide me, I have coaching programs for that, and I will link those down again in the show notes for you so you can take a look at some of those and see if either one-on-one support is good for you or if any of my other programs would be supplemental to helping you reach that outcome. And those are the biggest frustrations that I hear around why people quit or where they end up in that cycle of having a plateau and feeling like they just never get the results that they want no matter how hard they work. And it really comes down to not focusing on quick fixes, not focusing on all the distractions that you might see on social media, and really focusing on the strategic structure and the implementation of progression overload and making sure that you have those things and those metrics tracked, as well as the proper training plan for the outcome you want, because what you are doing right now and over the next 6 months is going to determine the outcome you get. So if you're just focusing on eating clean and getting movement, you might just be focusing on maintaining more than you are a deficit or in a surplus, and you might not get the outcome that you're looking for, just depending on how you're applying it. So you have to make sure that those are properly aligned. So let's run through some of the mistakes that I see oftentimes that will keep you stuck and how to fix them and apply them in your training plan. The first is under eating on protein. If you are currently under eating on protein and feeling like you have no idea how you're going to eat more protein, what I want you to do is start implementing a 30-30 rule. 30 grams of protein within 30 minutes of waking so that you start rushing your body with protein first thing when you wake up. It's going to help you get towards that bigger goal, but it's also going to help you throughout the day to be more mindful of your protein. The next is 30 grams of protein in every single meal as a bare minimum. Your meal source should be broken down by protein first, micronutrient second, complex carbohydrate third, and then healthy fats sprinkled in. You need to be focusing on your protein and your micronutrients first because those are easily the ones that require more prep time and they're not always the most appetizing. So ensure that you're getting those first and adding those onto your plate. If you are not, you are going to find that you're not going to obviously reach for those. You have to plan those in and be structured around them. So ensure you're adding that in, and especially protein at the very beginning so you can hit that protein goal. Next is you are living on cardio machines or you are doing too much cardio and not adding in the right movements. If you are just focusing on cardio or focusing on getting in more exercise in general, but it's not structured, specifically doing too much cardio, this is going to cause muscle wasting. If you're doing way too much high intensity, if you're doing way too much running, or you're doing way too much LISS cardio, which is low intensity steady state, this could be elliptical, stairmaster, running, jogging, anything like that, that is going to cause you to have more muscle wasting. It's going to increase your glycogen consumption and it's going to make you feel like you're more hungry. So it could be doing several things, putting you too steep of a deficit, which is going to cause you to not maintain as much muscle mass as you might want, putting you into more of a deficit to the point where you're starving and you can't keep in your numbers, which is going to make it hard for you to have that body composition because at this point you have to be more strategic with your numbers. And that can definitely have a cause and effect where you're having the on-off cycle where you feel really hungry, you're overeating, or you're not able to stay within those numbers. And now we're outside of our deficit, or we're too steep in our deficit, which is going to affect our metabolism and make us take from our muscle mass. So you want to make sure you have a good balance of two, not be overdoing it. The third is program hopping. This is a very common one that I see where you stop seeing results, you don't really know what to do, so you start bouncing around and doing a bunch of random things, and there's no structure and strategy behind what you're doing. You have to ensure with your training plan, you have structure, and unfortunately, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but the best training plans are often the most boring and consistent plans. We're not looking at changing exercises every other week. We're not looking at changing things up just because we get bored. The best case scenario I can tell you, if you want to build muscle mass and you're somebody who gets bored, change the days in which you do the program and add in more progression. Those are the ways you're going to add in change. But our goal specifically with changing body composition is to build muscle mass. So you want to ensure that you are doing training that's going to allow you to build muscle mass. And in order to do that, you have to be getting better at the same exercises over and over and over again. And you're not going to get better every single day. You're not going to get better week over week. You're not going to be able to add in weight consistently. So you have to make sure you're doing it for a longer period of time and you're doing it with progression applied. So that's where it gets really boring, is you could be doing the same training plan for 6 to 8 months before you see massive changes or progression and only increase your weight maybe 10 to 15 pounds at that time frame. So it's a really long period of time to be doing the same exercises with not a lot of progression. So this is why I say it's not a quick fix, and sometimes it's often very boring, but you have to make sure you're not program hopping. If you're doing a bunch of different exercises, going from plan to plan, jumping around from workout class to workout class, and there's no real structure, you're not going to see the outcome outcome you want, at that point, you're just getting exercise and movement in. And the last one is never tracking your progress, never tracking changes, and thinking that progression is just going to happen. If you are not paying attention to your progression, if you are not paying attention to your changes, and you are not tracking your actual progress, you have no idea if change is actually happening, especially if we're solely looking at your body weight. If you are looking at your body weight, you are not understanding your body composition fully. You are understanding a body mass number and what makes up that entire number. That could be your hair, your skin, your nails, your water weight, your body fat, and your muscle mass. So if you're just looking at that number solely, you're not going to see the best metric in which you're going to be able to track your progress. You need to be tracking progress photos, you need to be tracking your body measurements, and you need to be looking at body composition scanners. You can do this at home. I have a few that I've worked with before. The Hume Body Pod is my favorite personally. There's body scans you can do at your gyms, and I would recommend that you get some of these done so that you have the analysis and you have the data. There's a point in understanding the data though, and a point in obsessing about the data, because we don't want to be looking at maybe 1% body fat changes every single week. We want to be looking at the bigger picture and making sure we have those metrics to compare long term, because again, we're not looking at quick fixes. We're not looking at things that happen over a 4-week cycle. We're looking at things that happen over a 4 to 8 month cycle, because that's where true body composition changes happen. So here's how we're going to piece the entire thing together. I want you focusing on a 3 to 5 day split that's going to allow you to add progression in and be hitting at least every single muscle group 1 time per week. You can also add in some cardio, but we want to make sure that we're hitting 3 to 5 days of strength training and then adding in 30 minutes of supplemental cardio here and there. That's a little bit more low impact. And making sure that if you are adding cardio in, we're looking more at like a step goal than we are looking at high intensity. We're looking at a 3 to 5 day split in training and ensuring that you're adding progression into that, and we're focusing on compound movements. The next is you're centering your meals around protein and centering around meal timing so that you are focused on ensuring you're getting a good post-workout, ensuring you have energy for pre-workout, and that you're structuring your meals throughout the day so that you can keep up with your blood sugar and ensure that you are sustaining enough energy and eating enough throughout the day. You want to center your meals around protein and then build complex carbs and fats into your meals. You will start tracking your lifts and keeping track of your progression, where you're actually seeing progression and increased intensity. And then lastly, you have to be focused on the long game. We're not looking at short-term quick fixes. If you are focused on that, you are going to be upset and constantly feeling like you're starting over. We have to be looking at a longer game and how you're going to apply this over 6 months to a year, maybe 4 to 8 months as like the general guideline, but ensuring we're looking at bigger picture versus day over day or week over week progress. And if you take anything from this episode, I truly hope you understand that this is not a quick fix, that in order for you to change your body composition, you have to be focused on the things that are going to allow you to build muscle growth and muscle mass, which takes time. And in order to have a true body recomposition, you have to have the structure, strategy, and the time on your side in order to have the outcome that you want. If you don't have those 3 things, a lot of times this is where women will get stuck in a plateau or stuck wasting effort and not really sure what to do next because they don't have those 3 things aligned. So you need to be looking at which one you are maybe not paying attention to and how you can structure to add more strategy into your plan so you can get that outcome. And like I mentioned a couple times in this episode, if you need a place to start, the Transformation Roadmap is a great place to kind of get a breakdown of exactly what to be doing and exactly what to be focusing on. But if you're tired of this and you want to close the gap sooner from where you are now to the outcome you want and stop wasting time and energy and actually get a clear plan to do so, I have several training programs down below that you can check out that are designed specifically around personalizing a program to your outcome and the goals that you want. So take a look at those if you're interested, and that'll get you a next step of what to take if you're looking for something more personalized and you're ready to have more of that structure and strategy. Thank you so much for listening to today's podcast episode. I hope you truly enjoyed it. If you did, please make sure you give it a positive rating on the channel that you're listening to, and I will talk to you next week in the next episode.